Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for the ever very first MTGRocks Podcast. My name is Alan, and I have a couple of our staff over here at MTGRocks joining me today. Niall, what's up, Niall? How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Alan. I am the UK editor at MTGRocks, and you'll catch a lot of my stuff on site, kind of talking about everything from MTG Arena all the way through to competitive, and everything in between.
Nice, awesome. And also we have Shamus. What's up, Shamus? How you doing?
Hi everyone. I focus on the finance content on MTG Rocks, and yeah.
Nice. And also for those who don't know, I am the U.S. editor for MTG Rocks. I focus also on competitive stuff from historic to I do also vintage cube stuff, some videos here and there, previews. You'll see some of my stuff on that as well, some news things as well. So for our very very first podcast, we're at the end of the year. We're recording this on December 30th, and so I thought that one thing that we would love to do is take a look back at the year of 2021 and kind of go through what happened in the year. A lot has happened in Magic. A lot of sets came out, a lot of different events and just things happened. So we thought we'd take a look back at the year and, just kind of reflect on all of that stuff. Real quickly, before we just kind of jump into all of that, make sure you guys do us a quick favor. If you guys could check out mtgrocks.com. We got a whole bunch of fantastic content from all three of us, as well as some other folks on the website. We have a preview gallery for Kamigawa on Dynasty that's up right now. We always have those previews up to date. We're always up to date with all the news and things that are happening in the Magic space. So make sure you guys go check that out. Also, our Facebook page, our Twitter, as well as our YouTube channel, which you're checking out here. If you guys are new and you're just checking this out, make sure you drop a like on the video, throw us a comment, subscribe. All that's appreciated. So, all right, let's get right into it. So, sets that came out in the year, brand new stuff that just came out at the beginning of the year. Kaldheim, first set that came out February 5th, kind of coming out almost a year now. And what were your guys' kind of thoughts on Kaldheim? And I guess also what was kind of your favorite card from the set? Because it was a pretty unique set.
Yeah, I mean, Kaldheim changed a few things for me. I'm fairly new to the space. I'd only been playing for about a year when Kaldheim came out, and yet it had this massive effect on Arena, which is my primary, play source for MTG. Is that when the Kaldheim Championship took place, Arnie Huschenbeth ran the gauntlet with Dimir Rogues, and suddenly the entire community was like, I need to play that deck. Like, there was no doubt everyone on MTG Arena was playing Dimir Rogues the day after that tournament finished. It's a weird one because Kaldheim, obviously, yes, it was the first set in 2021, but technically it's released in the middle of the 2021 ranked season. So it was only going to be in rotation for a few more months. But with the introduction of Kaldheim and then some of the later sets, it just seemed like everyone flocked to what was popular, and the meta kind of just became, hey, this deck we've seen work at pro level, let's just use this. And the creativity kind of ran away from the game a little bit. On the cards front, it's down to two for me. It was a really hard choice. One of them I've used a lot more than the other, but I have to give Essica Chariot as the best card in the set. I can't stand playing against it, which is probably the biggest compliment I guess I can pay to it. It's just got its nerf in Alchemy, which again probably says enough about the card as a standard card. But Blood on the Snow was a runner up for me because despite maybe not being as relevant when Kaldheim first released, when we moved into the 2022 season and kind of some of the compositions that you could come up with Mono Black, it kind of really ended up being a diamond in the rough, maybe underappreciated at the time of the set release.
Yeah. What about you, Seamus?
When I think about Kaldheim, I think about how there was once again another rules errata. It wasn't as drastic or necessarily. It was actually probably necessary compared to the the Ikoria companions were definitely necessary, but that was just that was way over the top. But in Kaldheim, they had to fix the cascade mechanic because they printed Tibalt on the backside of Valky, and people were just able to 3-mana, what's the living end spell? Violent Outburst into a Tibalt, a 7-mana planeswalker, and it was just absolutely absurd. So they had to fix that, but I honestly think that rule change was for the better because it looks like they're going to be doing a lot more of these MDFC kind of cards, and so that was just that would have come up again and again and again. So I'm glad they fixed it there. As far as my favorite card for the set, I think I'm gonna go with Vorinclex, because mostly because of the lore implications. I'd say Phyrexians are back, and it looks like they're gonna be coming back again. I mean, I have my suspicions on Brothers Roar, since it's going to be a sort of, I would assume, artifact heavy set with lots of machines and stuff. So I think the Phyrexians are coming back, and yeah, Call time was cool. Lots of powerful cards, more than just Asika's Chariot nerfed. We got the Goldspan and Alrund's Epiphany that were just dominant. So Call time is a very strong set.
Yeah,
I think did we get Tybalt Trickery in that set as well, which ended up kind of just absolutely dominating for a few weeks until people realized that it's maybe a little bit cheap to win games like this, and it wasn't nearly as fun because, let's face it, the second it came out, most people were conceding anyway. But thankfully, I think it rotated out of what kind of the useful meta is considered to be at the minute.
Yeah.
And in best of one, or am I mistaken?
It's banned in historic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's banned in historic.
And actually, and I was gonna say my favorite card from Kaldheim was the World Tree, but it actually is Tybalt's Trickery. Let's be honest. And there will be a theme of this. Yeah. So Kaldheim for me, I think was I think maybe one of my favorite thematic sets of the year. I like the showcase frame art that they did for that set was incredible. I love kind of that Norse Viking sort of aesthetic. All of the saga arts were insane. They were so cool, really detailed. There was some really good, like really good tattoo ideas in there. Like there, I think even one of the Boros sagas is like somebody's arm is tattooed, like as it hits a full sleeve. Like it's a super cool thematic set. Yeah, Tybalt's Trickery for me, I think, really kind of came to play as this. For me, I love chaos, right? I love chaos decks in Commander. I love playing off the top of libraries. So kind of having this really weird kind of chaos style card that it's not, honestly, we don't see a ton of chaos cards printed anymore. They used to be a lot more prevalent. And so seeing one of those kinds of cards get printed again was huge for me. And particularly because I play Historic, there's a lot more fun things to hit in Historic off of Tybalt's Trickery. And this is something that comes a bit later in the year, but Tybalt's Trickery becomes a monstrous best of one powerhouse card with the release of Jumpstart Historic Horizons, even so far that it gets outright banned in the format. So I mean, it was probably at one point, I think, in the year, one of the most fun times playing Historic Tybalt's Trickery. Was just the most fun I've had playing Arena in quite some time. So it's just like you just win games out of nowhere that you just have no business winning. So yeah, so that was probably it for me there. Following that up, we have Strixhaven. So Strixhaven coming out before Strixhaven, Time Spiral Remastered. We'll talk about that one because we'll talk about that briefly. Time Spiral Remastered came out in March, a set that was to combine the Time Spiral block, the OG Time Spiral block, and bring it into the modern age with some modern looking, frames and things of that sort. We didn't get all the cards, but for anybody, I guess, no, I don't think any of us here playing during original Time Spiral. No, okay, yeah, I wasn't either. It was a cool set. I'd like to see that remastered stuff. What do you guys think about it?
I mean, I saw one card and I want that card in standard today, and it's Mana Teeth. It's a 1 white counterspell. Like, give me a white counterspell, please. I'm trying to run the gauntlet with mono white aggro at the minute, and every time I see an Auron's Epiphany or something like that, I'm just like, I wish I could do something about this. But sadly, not at the moment. We've only just been given draw potential in Crimson Vow, so I can't ask for too much and ask for a counterspell as well.
Yeah, I think for me, I've dabbled in some of the older Time Spiral cards just from playing a lot of like modern and and legacy and things of that sort. So that I'm familiar with a lot of the cards. I think just like having this remastered set, I'd like to see them do more of it because there were a lot of iconic cards from older sets that just are hard to get a hold of for one reason or another, whether it was because the cards are in horrible condition because just back then people didn't believe in sleeves. They just weren't a popular thing back then. Or just people are hoarding products, or it was just undersold and underprinted and underappreciated. And so just some of the cards are just hard to get a hold of. So yeah, I would love to see them do kind of more of this stuff. You know, and also I guess also too, and I guess from Seamus, maybe you'll speak to this. It impacts the finances a lot of the game.
Yeah. There was like a solid window after it was released where there were some really key pickups, like you could get Chalice of the Voids for like $25. Urborgs, I think, saw a slightly all-time low, although that one's hard to go down to. That's hard to drop the price of that one too much because it's just a staple in so many things. I was gonna say, as far as the journal set goes, like I was really impressed by all the like time shifted cards, but as far as like the actual set, it felt like it speaks to power creep a little bit. Like there's a ton of good cards in there, like Tarmogoyf, Pact of Negation, and then like for commander players, there's just like the Sliver, what we call it, the
Sliver
Sliver
Legion.
Legion, which was like a fantastic reprint for finance purposes as well. Like I think that thing was like it's
Close
$100.
to $100, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was $100, and then today it's I mean obviously substantially less. I think it's like 20 now. But yeah, so there's great financial implications of that set. But I was just a little bit disappointed with the main set itself. There just felt like there were so many bulk rares. Um, and it felt like the whole excitement of that Time Spiral remaster set was within those retro frame cards. Um, so
Yeah, I do remember seeing a lot of those, and I was trying to find a list of the retro frame cards that they did in the set. I remember, yeah, like here, I think like Chalice was one in there. They did a whole bunch. Like Panharmonicon, I think, was in there. So I think like, there was a bunch of like just really. I think was Panharmonicon in that. I don't remember. There was a lot of really cool ones. So yeah.
yeah.
Um, any last thoughts on this set before we move on?
No, nothing. Yeah.
No. Okay, Strixhaven, April coming up. So Strixhaven are college themed set, you know, kind of akin to almost like a Cons of Tarkir sort of type of deal, Ravnica type of thing. And actually, very recently, Mero had said this was his favorite. I think it's either his favorite or his most well designed set of all time that he's done. So Strixhaven, very cool set. Again, not as like unique per se as far as like mechanically unique, I would say. But thematically very cool. Kind of brings a little bit more of a modern day, almost Harry Potter meets magic sort of vibe to the game, which was cool. I guess now, what did you think about Strixhaven?
Yeah, I think it brought us, the kind of the lesson cards, the idea of learn as a mechanic, which I think I didn't think I'd be using it nearly as much now when the set came out, but it seems to be a pretty huge part of a lot of the meta decks at the moment. Kind of secondary to that, it brought in Ward, which it adds that extra layer of thinking when a card is played. Having something like Hall of Storm Giants as a land, which can transform into a 7/7, and then thinking, okay, fine, I'll get it off the table, but I'll wait. There's it's got Ward as well. You're gonna have to pay an extra 3 mana to get rid of it, and it kind of really adds that extra layer of thinking. I think the card that probably did it best was Sedgemoor Witch. So it had a ward of pay 3 life, And if you couldn't get it off the table and your opponent was just casting spell after spell, suddenly they're building up this little creature army, and every time one of those creatures dies, they're gaining life. And if it wasn't managed properly, it was an issue. So I really like what was brought to the table through Ward and through the lesson cards and the learn system. I think, with Maro saying it's kind of a set that he's been very proud of. It felt like that with the amount of marketing that went into the set, because it had a whole YouTube series of them teaching, people who have never played Magic how to play the game, and you definitely got that Harry Potter vibe, and it was nice to see them put that much effort into promoting a set, really, because I don't think we've necessarily had that with any of the rest of the standard sets for the year. When it comes to cards, again, it's a difficult one, as it is with every set, to kind of pick one out of the bunch. I did go with Professor Onyx as my favorite. I'm not typically a huge Planeswalker player, but saying that, a later set I will pick another Planeswalker, but she was just such an impact card, and kind of as Mono Black slowly got better and better as the year went on, she became an essential card to have in the deck. Maybe a little bit costly at 2 black plus 4, but if she resolves, the opponent's in trouble, which is exactly what you want when you've got a Planeswalker in your deck. Other kind of notables for me were Elite Spellbinder. I love the artwork for that. Obviously, it's Dama de Rosa for his World Championship win. Sedgemoor Witch, as I've already mentioned, and a card that has definitely come into use a lot lately with Is It Turns, Divide by Zero. So, basically it's a counter spell of sorts. Obviously, it doesn't put the card in the graveyard, it puts it back in the hand, but then you also get to learn off the back of it and put an additional card in your hand. So, again, a card that's probably much more appreciated now in the 2022 season compared to when it was released in the 2021 season.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, I was going to say that the Divide by Zero was one of those cards that when I was playing Standard 22, when they had those Standard 2022 queues in Arena, I completely undervalued how good that card was until I cast it, and I was like, wow, this card is bonkers. This card is insane. Shamus, what about you? What did you think about Strixhaven?
That's also my favorite card to play alongside Leer, which has kind of been picking up in standard race recently. Since you can't counter things with Leer, you could still bounce it back to hand, and it's kind of like an effective soft counter.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the set goes, there's so many great commander cards in this set. We got like Wandering Archaic, the I copy your spell colorless guy that can just go in every single deck. Archmage Emeritus, which is the 4-mana wizard that you draw a card whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell. That thing's picking up in, like, I'm seeing it even on the CEDH database. And there's one more card, but I'm going to leave that for my newsletter this week. So check that out, guys, if you have not already subscribed. And then, again, there is this like great reprint potential, because with Strixhaven came the Mystical Archives. And there are just so many cool cards in that set. We got our first ever is unprecedented, where they gave us a card before it was technically kind of released. They gave us Abundant Harvest, which was going to come out in Modern Horizons 2, and they just gave it to us early, which was kind of sweet. It was legal in Historic, I believe, immediately, but it wasn't legal in paper until the set that it was actually supposed to come out in. But there are just so many sweet Mystical Archive cards, and really, really solid reprints. We got like Natural Order. There was Teferi's Protection, which is just a super commander staple of White Ducks. And we could probably use even another reprint of that, honestly. Like Time Warp. There's just so many good cards in the Mystical Archives with Japanese alternate arts too that are beautiful. So
Yeah, I think that for me, the main set favorite card has to be Prismari, Galzeth Prismari. I love treasure tokens, going big, is it, and just being able to cast a billion spells. But the Mystical Archives were something that was unique. That was a brand new thing that I don't think Wizards has ever done before in a set. Kind of reprinting some of these iconic cards throughout Magic's history in a new frame, with new art. And Kagado did some, which is the Japanese studio, art studio that helps Wizards find some of these prolific Japanese artists. They're working with them on Kamigawa stuff too. They did an absolutely outstanding job on all of the Japanese mystical archives. Just they're beautiful. They look great in foil. Those are going to be cards that kind of stand the test of time as like just kind of, I think, the best versions of pretty much every single one of the cards that was printed. I think they're just the best versions. The Demonic Tutor is insane. Lightning Helix looks incredible. Mind's Desire looks insane. It just all looks so good. So yeah, it's awesome to see that Wizards kind of willing to step out of kind of the traditional process of getting artists. I mean, they kind of did that with the Japanese, the anime Planeswalkers from War of the Spark, which were a huge success. All of those are still commanding a decent price point for at least some of the bigger popular ones. But just having more talent, more diverse talent in their artist pool is a big win, and really solidifying that kind of this year. We'll talk about that more. Cool. I think that's cool for that. So very shortly after Strixhaven came out, we had Modern Horizons 2.
So much to talk about.
Much to talk about Modern Horizons 2. One of the most, I think just one of the most impactful sets, if not the most impactful set in any set in Magic's history ever, bar none. For anybody who is a modern player, the blight that is Modern Horizons 2 on the format right now. I think I just saw something on Twitter.
We call it a blight.
I'm gonna call it a blight because let's be honest. I'm a modern boomer. Okay, I played in the OG modern days back in a GP Chicago. It was like 2013 or something like that, where the decks at the time were Affinity and Jund and Splinter Twin and Kiki Cord. That was the jam. And
Kiki Cord was my first deck. I was around back then too.
See, but here's the thing. I saw a list today on somebody posted on Twitter. The top 10 most played cards in Modern. 7 of them, I believe, were Modern Horizons 2 cards. I'm going to call it a blight just because I kind of miss old school, old Modern to some extent, but I also do enjoy seeing that. I say that with like kind of a not love-hate sort of thing. The format's evolving, right? That's one thing that's super important to note is that Wizards is willing to go to these lengths to print some busted cards.
They're good.
Yeah, they're very good, to say the least.
Well, on the note that you said, I don't think it's been old Modern for some time now. Like,
yeah,
I think Companions were like a major milestone that like shifted everything to a new, like, just twisted, distorted it, where everything started revolving around like Luris and things like that. But there's been several like milestones, like even Eldraine kind of rocked every Magic format with certain cards, and it's definitely just been evolving, and Modern Horizons 2 is what's that idiom? Arms and legs above? No, that's not
head and shoulders.
Heads and shoulders. Yeah, it's heads and shoulders above many other Magic sets, but I think it's doing some cool things for the format. It's revived some old archetypes in addition to creating new ones, like Affinity's back, which is pretty sweet. Hasn't been around since the Mox Opal ban, and they're finally back on the map with some like really cool new cards. Ursa Saga, which is probably a love-hate relationship with a lot of people. If you play it, you love it. If you play against it, you most likely hate it. But also like Thought Monitor is another great addition for Affinity decks, just to bring things back. Now what are your thoughts on MH2?
I mean, this is where I get absolutely like pull your pants down exposed, because I do not play Modern. So one of my big kind of 2022 kind of, I guess, New Year's resolutions is to actually touch what I see is the hot garbage of MTG Online. I look at that launcher. I look at everything about that, the trading system, ticket system, and I think, thank God I got into Arena first.
Yeah.
Obviously, only having kind of picked things up, maybe kind of late 2019, early 2020. I haven't had the chance to kind of go to an LGS and play Modern properly, where it's probably going to be the better experience. Same goes for Commander. But I have to at some point look at online and realize that's going to be my best way to kind of learn some of these more formats, and Modern and Commander are definitely the two that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
I will say, as time goes on, I'm gaining more of an appreciation for Magic Online, even though yes, it's antiquated. It's not quite as like spreadsheety as it used to be. I remember the like original versions of Magic Online. It was not good. It's definitely gotten better, and ever since I've somehow fixed whatever, I had memory leak issues with the program where I had to restart the client after every match. It's been great, actually. It's been like having the and I guess we'll talk about Magic Online a bit later, but I would go into it not as I go into it skeptical, but just be ready to be pleasantly surprised when it's actually not as bad as you think. But yes,
I say it's downloaded now. I've already got one step further than I ever have before, so we can only go up from here.
Magic Online, definitely a great way to try out these other formats, and a lot cheaper, especially if you want to say go with like Card Hoarder or Mana Traders, their loan programs. Small fee every week, you get to borrow cards and just play with them, and then you return them and get more, right? What's nice about Online too is that Commander's really cheap. Like you can build really high tier, really high tier caliber CDH level decks with very few ticks, maybe like 25 ticks tops. Like it's actually quite nice.
On the topic of the finance, Modern Horizons 2, if you wanted to try it out on paper, it has kind of raised the bar on prices for modern decks too, so it makes it even a little bit harder for. There are still some affordable decks. I guess that depends on your definition of affordable, but there are some that are not $1,700. So...
I mean, I think even the best deck in the format's not even quite that much money, right? It's like maybe $800 for Hammer Time.
Hammer Time's like
it's fairly
11?
It's fairly affordable. I mean, if we're calling several $100s affordable, Burn's probably still. Burn's surprisingly actually more expensive than I ever anticipated it was ever going to be, but it's relatively affordable too.
Yeah. Burn's about 500, which is
that's not bad.
Pretty solid, and take into consideration that you're buying a land base with that, and so land bases generally can translate to some other decks. In some cases they can't, but
they're multi-use. They have multi-use.
Yeah, they translate to your EDH decks and other modern decks and stuff like that. So they're I would say they're pretty good investments to make anyways. And so once you have that land base, then these decks are actually
not that bad, unless you're playing Ragavan.
Yeah.
I will say though, Modern Horizons 2 did have a bit more of an impact than just in Modern. It was in Jumpstart Historic Horizons. A lot of Modern Horizons and Modern Horizons 2 cards showed up in that set for Magic Arena, and it ran the tables with Historic. And this is kind of where I'm going to come back to the Tipple's Chicory thing. For whatever reason, Wizards decided to print Throes of Chaos in Jumpstart Historic Horizons, which is, I believe, from Modern Horizons 1. And then they also decided to put Sarah's Emissary in the set. And they didn't, I guess maybe they didn't have the foresight to imagine that we would be able to very consistently go Throes of Chaos into Tipple's Chicory into Sarah's Emissary, I win the game on turn 4 or turn 3. Like, that's just not a thing that they apparently foresaw, and it was some of the most fun Magic I've had playing in a long time. It was fantastic. But no, Modern Horizons 2 definitely having a big impact across multiple formats. I think even like Legacy, Vintage, all the cards are being heavily played across all the formats there. Also, just one of the I think the most successful selling Magic set of all time. Right. So big W for Wizards on that one.
Yeah, I'm not a Legacy player, but I've heard that Ragavan holding up Days and Force is being
Gross.
kind of
Yep.
influencing the format. Let's say.
Yep. Murktide as well. Murktide's actually seen
Yeah.
play. It's gross. Actually disgusting.
I can't speak to the. I know there's like a rally for a Ragavan bans from a lot of players.
It's not
And I
gonna.
can't speak to the Legacy side, but I feel like it's probably a little bit more egregious in Legacy with the free counter magic that you can hold up to protect it. I kind of don't mind it in Modern, honestly.
Its power level is not quite to the extent, like when we're talking about banning 1-mana cards, we have to think about, is Ragavan on the same power level as Deathrite Shaman?
Yeah.
Maybe it's close.
It's very connect with it. You gotta connect with it. Like that's I think
right, and that's the thing, is that DRS had to just sit there.
Yeah.
Cool. Any final thoughts on MH2?
I feel like we could go on forever with it, so let's maybe move on to Adventures in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, so AFR, Magic's first crossover, full-blown crossover set. Adventures in the Forgotten Realms with D&D comes out in July. Again, this is I think a very big thematic and flavor and mechanics win. A lot of very interesting new things came out of this set, even though the set kind of was like a Fallen Empires type of thing, where there's like not a ton of financially successful cards, or honestly very many. Yeah, it's kind of like a core set. I think it was actually replacing a core set. And so, you know, it was still a very, very cool set, and kind of in a vacuum, right? So I guess, Niall, what did you think about AFR kind of as a whole?
Yeah, I thought it was, again, probably one of the prettiest sets. You know, I know Kaldheim had kind of that Norse-inspired kind of artwork, the showcase frames and all that sort of stuff, and that was cool. But AFR was what hit for me, with just kind of, especially things like those kind of what they like D&D rule cover lands, things like that. You know, even just some of the standard art, like the colored dragons, you know, it was the base card and it was just absolutely stunning. And then you had the showcase frame for each, or the borderless frame, sorry, for each one as well. You know, there wasn't a single thing in that set art wise that I could look at and be like, oh, I would have done this differently. You know, that's kind of, you know, one box ticked when it came to how it played. I thought it was fantastic. I think the only thing where it fell short was dungeons. You know, maybe they planned for dungeons to still be a thing, but I don't think I've seen a dungeon in play since maybe 2 weeks after it released. They really didn't maybe have the effect overall on gameplay that they thought it would. It's not to say it can't come back, you know, with the sets that we've still got to come throughout the rest of 2022. Maybe they could come back into play and into relevance, but I'd highly doubt it. Same for dice rolling. You know, not many cards utilized it, and it's a cool thing to kind of hedge your bets on. But realistically, there's enough pure luck to Magic sometimes as it is, especially if you're playing off the top of the deck. You don't then want to be rolling a dice and seeing the one come up every single time, because that feels like how it's going to be sometimes. In terms of cards, I think for me, the class cards were absolutely brilliant. I know not all of them are kind of as relevant as each other. You know, Ranger class is probably the most prominent that you'll see out there, maybe closely followed by Cleric and Paladin. Maybe Warlock as well in a few mono black zombies decks. You can get decent use out of that. But Ranger class stands out head and shoulders above the rest for me. Orcas, Prince of Undeath. I absolutely love that card. It's a fairly decent commander card from what I understand as well, which is great to have that kind of versatility. But in standard play, you know, when it lands and resolves, you've kind of got to make that choice. You know, am I in trouble, and do I need to clear the board by giving everything, you know, -X, or do I want to kind of swing the tide of battle and start bringing things back from the dead? And you know, in addition to itself being a bit of a pest, the fact that it's a 5/3 with flying and trample as well. So, you know, it's a big card that if it resolves, it can really swing things. But overall, my kind of pick is a card that I'm still kind of pinning my entire mono black deck around, and that's Lolth Spider Queen. You know, you've got to have 4 copies of that. It's a pain in the ass to play against. You know, that 0 is your draw potential. the -3, you create your 2 spiders. I think they're 2/1 with reach as well. So if you're kind of really in trouble and you build up an army of spiders, you might be able to take care of an Elrond's Epiphany or the 10 Elrond's Epiphanies with Galvanic Iteration that you might be facing. But no, just as a planeswalker, this may be the year where I start appreciating planeswalkers a bit more. But I thought Lolth was kind of head and shoulders above the rest, and some fantastic art and alternate art too.
Nice, yeah. Seamus, what about you?
As far as the power level of this set, it was a bit underwhelming to me. I mean, it felt like I just thought of it as a core set, which core sets I always just like pick out just a handful of cards to actually get. And I think the best cards out of the set for me were these monocolored the lands, the man lands where they become creatures. The fact that they come in untapped is amazing. I think they all have seen play in standard at some point. And some of them are even seeing play in modern, like Den of the Bugbear is fantastic in Rakdos Rock decks. And honestly, Treasure Vault has been kind of surprising me too. Like just the fact that it's an artifact land is pretty good. I'm doing a weird. I have the Karn Wishboard in my Primeval Amulet, my Amulet Titan deck, and being able to minus Karn to go get a land if you need it is out of your sideboard is actually pretty sweet. So I'd actually say that's probably my card for the set is Treasure Vault, followed behind by Den of the Bugbear.
Nice. For me, AFR was something that I've played D&D for almost 10 years, maybe a little bit more than 10 years at this point, and D&D is it's always a fun time with my friends, and for me, there are two cards that stand out, and I cannot pick between the two. I just can't. For my favorite cards of the set, the first one being Bard class, because I play Bardstorm in Historic. I played Bardstorm in Historic, and I've got to Mythic with Bardstorm, which for anybody who doesn't know exactly what that is, Bardstorm, Bard class makes your legends cheaper by a red and a green, and then as you level it up, they get and they also get +1/+1 counters on them when they enter the battlefield. As you level it up, whenever you cast a legendary spell, you exile the top 2 cards of your library and you can cast them. And if they're legends, they're reduced in cost. So you would play a bunch of green and red legend cards. You just flood the board with a bunch of legendary creatures, Targnar, Galia, Rada, and then you'd eventually just slam a Samit, Voice of Dissent, I think is the one that the creature.
Give haste to everything, yeah.
And then you give haste to everything, and then just jam, and you just combo off in one turn, and you can get your combo going fairly quickly, just because of the mana cost reduction, and you even can play a decent mid range game just because you had the ability to just go, turn 2 Bard class, turn 3 level Bard class, play Targnar and Galia in the same turn, and now you have 2 pretty sizable threats that can start getting damage in and can block decently well. So it was just one of my favorite decks to play in Historic that's kind of been in the last year. Super fun. Again, one of those decks can just kind of win out of nowhere. And then the other card that personally for me has I was super happy to see that they did it, that they put this card in the set, was Deck of Many Things. And the only reason I say that is, for one, I said I love chaos, and actually I forgot to mention my MH2 favorite card is Glimpse of Tomorrow, so more chaos. Deck of Many Things and me go way back in D&D, in my D&D history, because all of my characters, I believe, every single one of my characters has died to the Deck of Many Things because I cannot resist. I have no self-control when it comes to just pulling cards from the deck. I've died to death itself. I've died to being turned into an inanimate object and teleported somewhere else in the world. I've died to being frozen in a crystal. I've gained riches and levels. I've lost all of my magical items. I've done every single thing that you can imagine from that deck. I've pulled every card across all my characters. And so I'm super happy that they have it. I have a foil version in my deck box for whenever I'm going to whatever commander deck I decide I want to have next, whatever I build next, it's going in there, just hands down. So that's just, it's one of those things that for me has a lot of sentimental value, and so it's hard to pick for me, but those are my two for the set. Any final thoughts on AFR, gents?
I'm ready for some Midnight Hunt, I think.
Yep. So Midnight Hunt, and I guess we can kind of combo in Crimson Vow as well into, because these are kind of, they're related sister sets. So Innistrad, Midnight Hunt, Crimson Vow, the third time we are returning to the plane. Midnight Hunt being a werewolf inspired set, and Crimson Vow being the vampire theme set. September 24th for Midnight Hunt, November 19th for Crimson Vow just came out. Wizards, again, taking a lot of very cool thematic world building cues here from some old school monster movie references and such. Generally, in my opinion, I think Midnight Hunt was fairly lackluster. I think there was some cards that made a big splash competitively, but overall the set was kind of it was cool. It was fine, for me. Anyways, but yeah, Niall, what'd you think about the Innistrad duo, the double feature?
Yeah, I'm a big fan, like you say, especially with that kind of creature feature inspiration. The double feature compilation set that's coming up. I'm trying to resist, but I'm not sure my bank account is strong enough. But kind of these two coming out back to back, I don't think in either set there was, like you say, kind of a remarkable set of cards, but they both did enough to bolster the competitive scene. They both added something. Midnight Hunt, first and foremost, Shamus has already mentioned it, but my favorite card from it is Leah, Disciple of the Drowned. Playing that in Is It Turns at the minute, again, it's a game changer. The way that you can just get your entire graveyard of instants back, it causes problems. It's another one of those cards where if the opponent hasn't got anything to deal with it, if they're maybe tapped for mana, it's probably an instant concede. So that's the kind of card I like to be playing. Meat Hut Massacre is another one. It's one that I think, again, came out and maybe surprised a few people with the price that it ended up reaching. But it's a staple of any mono black deck at the minute. It really countered the aggro meta that really kicked in the 2022 season. As someone who was playing and is still playing mono white aggro and trying to make it work, Meat Hook Massacre is my worst nightmare because I just don't have the time to grow creatures before yet another one comes out and takes everything off the battlefield. And kind of another standout card would be kind of Galvanic Iteration. The way that thing is pairing with pretty much all spells in Is It at the minute, especially Aaron's Epiphany. It's just the second you see it, you know what's coming next. It's never good, and the game is probably over from there. We've kind of written about maybe it's a bit too overpowered with things like Aaron's Epiphany, and maybe was the R&D done that thoroughly? But then what came next was the announcement of Alchemy, and then you kind of put two and two together and you think, oh, maybe that is the way the game might be going soon. But we'll kind of talk about that with the Alchemy announcement. But yeah, so for me, from Midnight Hunt, it would be Leah. I was a fan of some of the mechanics that came in as well. I like Decayed, that kind of mono black zombies deck. I've never played it myself, but coming up against it has always been a real nightmare. Ironically, it's things like Meat Hook Massacre again that is probably one of the biggest counters to it. They'll build up this massive army, and then in one fell swoop you can get rid of most of it. Moving kind of on to Crimson Vow. Favorite card is easy for me because it felt like it was the missing piece for mono white. It's wedding announcement / festivity. We finally have some white draw potential. It's not the best, don't get me wrong. But it's a 1 white +2. You get 3 turns where it's either going to allow you to draw a card or put another token on the battlefield for you, and then once it flips, everything gets +1/+1. So if you're working with things like Clarion Spirit, Monk of Open Hand, you're producing tokens anyway, you're boosting characters, you've got your Luminarch aspirant on there as well. It's just going to get chaotic, and kind of you really look into be going for fatal swings on turn 4 or 5, which is crazy. But that card was the missing piece for me. If you can attack with 2 creatures, you get to draw a card. If you don't, it will give you another token creature so that next turn hopefully you can attack with 2 and draw the card. It's not a legendary as well, so obviously you can have multiple. So again, if you resolve a few, you can have them operating at with different amounts of counters on them, and then by the time they all resolve, again, you've just got this unstoppable army. White did really benefit, I think, from Crimson Vow more than it has any other set, because you also got Talia in that set as well, Guardian of Threban. Fantastic early card, which obviously sets everything your opponent has cost up by 1. Also has first strike, so even though it is only a 2/1, that first strike means that everything you're going to come up against in probably turn 1 to 3, you'll be able to kill it, and your opponent is going to have to burn a spell to get rid of it early on. Wasn't a massive fan of the mechanics that came with Crimson Vow. Cleave was really smart, like it was a great idea, but I just don't think it's been implemented on enough cards to be anything major. Blood tokens, again, it's very specific unless you're running a specific blood token or vampire deck. I mean, they're not really that useful. I've kind of built blood in draft a few times, and it's been fun to play with, but it's not something I would construct around. And then you kind of had training and exploit, which again, they're so. Again, they weren't really forced into too many cards, so they don't take away from the game, but at the same time, I'm not seeing them in action too much in the games that I'm playing either.
I think Blood could have been really cool if they like really went into the vampire theme and put Madness in the set too. Like if they did Blood alongside Madness, you could have so many cool they just have fun synergies. Like I know they're like obviously designed for each other, but like yeah, they're designed for each other. So let's have them in the same set. It would have been really cool, I think.
Yeah, I think even like most vampire decks that I see at the minute, they have obviously some cards that will produce blood tokens, but they just sit there on the battlefield and do nothing. Most of the vampire decks at the minute seem to be built around is it Olivia, the legendary vampire? She can bring another creature back from the grave and things like that. So even the kind of the decks that do produce the tokens aren't really using them. I guess they're good to have in the situation where you do need to draw something else and you've got maybe 20 lands in your hand or whatever, but I mean, at the minute, yeah, it feels like a missed opportunity more than kind of something with potential still. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I think I've seen the new Edgar kind of popping up in, I think, Pioneer, and I know not too many people play that set anymore. I still just keep tabs on it because I love the set or the format. But I think Edgar's been kind of popping up because of the Sorin Planeswalker, which is just a fantastic Planeswalker. The Imperious Bloodlord, I think, is what its full name is.
Yeah.
And and like obviously it's still probably best to play it into the 5-drop vampire that draws cards, but Edgar's showing up in that.
Dusk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Shamus.
Oh, I was gonna say for the Innistrad sets, there's so many cards, especially in Crimson Vow. I'm really tied between 2 cards for my favorite. Chandra, the new Chandra Dress to Kill, is just so cool with Light Up the Stage. I'm working on building a mono red deck in Modern that plays it just a ton of 1-drops and tries to curve up into Chandra to light up the stage and then just keep playing 1-drops. But I also really like Cultivator Colossus because I'm a Titan player in Modern, and just having one copy in the deck to Summoner's Pact for, it can circumstantially be better than Titan. Just in some cases. Normally, I've found that Titan is still the go-to play, but there are some like sweet turns you can have, especially if you have Amulet, although it's always cool if you have Amulet. But being able to play a Cultivator Colossus, sometimes you'll just resolve that trigger and it will take like 5 minutes and you just play like 10 lands and then you have to untap everything at the end. It's fantastic. As far as Midnight Hunt goes, I'm with Niall. It's got to be Lear. It's just the coolest card, especially in Arena when you slam it and your whole graveyard just shows up in your hand and you have like 20 cards going across the screen. It's there's no better feeling. It's so cool. And you know what? Maybe even to top everything off are just the basic lands. They look so good. I really like the black and white. They may have been trumped by the new Kamigawa ones coming up. Those are absolutely stunning, but I do like the Innistrad lands a lot.
Yeah. For me, I think modern. Innistrad had some very. I mean, I loved Innistrad. I played an OG Innistrad. It was really kind of cool to see because like for me the Shadows block, like Shadows over Innistrad, Eldritch Moon, didn't really feel like Innistrad to me. That whole set was flooded with Eldrazi, and it was not what it felt weird. But coming back, it felt from a thematic standpoint was awesome, right? From a nostalgia perspective, it was cool. But for me, the cards that I think really to me stood out, I'm a Taxes player, so Thalia really hits home for me as a phenomenal reprint, kind of the reprint we needed for standard, but just to be able to get access to play that in standard in addition to some of the other Taxes cards that we have, like and also like Elite Spellbinder. We also had Skyclave Apparition and Archon of Emeria, just various other Taxes effects was super cool, and Thalia was kind of the missing piece for that. Chandra, Dressed to Kill, like Shamus said, my favorite Planeswalker, I think probably my favorite Planeswalker of the year. Again, super cool for Modern, has some great implications for. I also love Big Red as a deck, which I'm finding that now the Mono Red Dragons deck in Alchemy is insanely fun. And she is a key player in that deck. So Chandra, very cool. Also, the alternate art that they did is stunning as well.
Would you say she is better in the Dragons deck than the 3-mana Sarkhan would be?
Oh, hands down.
Yeah, even though he's the dedicated dragon, like I think he makes 2 mana for dragons, but I feel like Chandra's just
no. Chandra's way better. Yeah, Chandra just does more of what you need, right? The 1 mana is enough to make like you were saying, like to have like that 1-drop removal spell be there. She gets you from she gets you in particularly in the Dragon's deck because you're playing a cost reduction spell in Fearsome Whelp. She lets you also kind of go into multiple 4/4 flying dragons or 6/6 flying dragon in one turn. You can flood your board very, very quickly, and it's a super fun deck. So yeah, I think she's much better for that, and the incremental damage does matter quite a bit for her. For Midnight Hunt, I think Midnight Hunt was such a odd set for me that I like, as far as like trying to pick a card. I think Curse of Silence might be the card that I would pick for my favorite out of the set. A really kind of out of left field pick, but again, it's a very good Taxes card. It's also a sweet Enchantress card for Historic. Just a one white mana enchantment that kind of taxes your opponent's cards, lets you draw some cards if they play the particular card you named. It's a very cool addition to particularly for like Historic and Taxes decks. And kind of with that, I think that that rounds out our 2021 standard or I guess paper set release or paper set stuff. So there are other things that did kind of happen throughout the year as far as Magic is concerned, and some of the stuff a little bit less noteworthy to talk about. We'll kind of blitz through some of those. So I guess we talked about Jumpstart Historic Horizons a bit. For anybody who plays Arena and who plays Historic, this is a big deal. We hit on a good number of talking points about that. Arena came out on iOS, which is cool. Just kind of get more access to the game for more people across iOS phones, iPhones, and iPads.
On that, I think there should have been maybe just a little bit of foresight with the kind of crossplay aspect of it, because I think just after it launched, there were kind of a few server issues here and there. And obviously, sometimes when you're playing on your phone, especially if you're using a public connection, you can quite easily find yourself timing out. And it just left a lot of players playing on PC just watching timeouts run out again and again and again. And it's just like, okay, I'd like to be able to play with people that maybe just on PC to avoid those issues, because it's kind of unfair on everyone. But at the same time, if people are going to go into a ranked game playing on mobile and that's how they lose, I'm going to take the win.
Yeah.
I like cheap wins. I play aggro decks. I'll
Sure.
take a cheap win.
Yeah, get more games in. A funny thing that happened. So Magic Legends, for anybody who didn't know what Magic Legends is, it was an ARPG. So think about Diablo, think about Path of Exile, but set in the Magic universe. You kind of picked a planeswalker, and they had some interesting kind of card spell mechanics baked into it. It went into open beta on March 23rd, and then completely was canceled in June, at the end of June. Kind of funny. Just I think
but funny and sad, because it had potential, and it had backing, like Perfect World, who were going to publish it. Then like that's a reputational hit for them, and Perfect World are a big company. I mean, Neverwinter's been going for how long now as an MMO, which is one of the hardest genres to keep a game alive in. You know, just ask people like WoW, who have had to do so much over the last decade plus just to keep that game relevant. And yet they've kind of had to take this hit and just say, listen, rather than say maybe we went too soon and putting it back into beta, I think there was just too much wrong with it. Obviously, on the monetization front, the less said about that, the better. It was looking like it was going to be very pay to win. But yeah, like it was blink and you miss it. It felt like weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks between the early access and the cancellation. It was obviously a few months. But it was sad, because obviously a lot of people probably worked very hard on that, and you never know what the story. I would love to hear what the story behind it was, because it seems like it just wasn't ready to be shown off, and especially not hands on with the public. So I'm keen to know just what went wrong there that led to cancellation.
Makes me really nervous for the upcoming Netflix series. Like, I know they're unrelated, but I'm just kind of concerned about that too, especially with the studio shifting and stuff.
I was gonna say this is just another string of bad. I'm gonna say bad. Not Magic the Gathering core game spin-off games. From Puzzle Quest, and just like there's just like anything that's not just Magic the Gathering doesn't end up on mobile. It's still going. There's a Puzzle Quest game. Okay. It's still up. You can go download it now. Not sponsored, by the way. But it's just another string of just bad things happening. And for me, I'm an avid ARPG player. I've played a ton, like thousands of hours of Diablo 3. Almost 1,200 hours of Path of Exile. I played Wolcen. I've played Lost Ark. I played all of these different ARPGs, and I love the genre. And I played the closed alpha for Magic Legends. It was okay. It had its problems. It had technical issues, performance issues. And then when it went into beta, I tried it again, and it wasn't any better. It just did not get any better. Like, just the cinematics looked terrible. I think they performed better in the alpha than they did in the beta, which is weird. I don't know why. Gameplay was slow and clunky and just not. And I have a very high bar. I think Path of Exile is kind of the bar that I set for gameplay fluidity from an ARPG perspective, just from the pacing of the game. And maybe it was the character I played. I don't know, but it just did not feel good to play. And so it kind of sucks. I would have loved to have seen it, have it see through to a release and maybe things get better. But ultimately, at the end of the day, just another L that they're going to have to, that Perfect World has to take here. And that the Wizards is going to also kind of have to take as well. MPL gets retired. So the Magic Pro League kind of falls off and gets retired from, and Wizards announces that in May, which kind of leaves the competitive world in a bit of a limbo. A lot of people kind of wondering what's happening this year. This coming year is the last season for the MPL, so you will still see MPL matches and things of that happening over on Magic Twitch. I think they still stream it, I think, over there. But that's still happening this year, and then after this year, it's done. As far as we know, and there's many reasons for that failing, right? I mean, no publisher pays their players, right? It's third-party support, it's third-party teams that are paying players, and that's why I think that this ultimately failed. They drained their cash on this way too quickly by paying what is it, 16 or 32 players, and the contract was like 75 grand or something a year, that you were in the MPL. And so like that's a lot of money over the course of like I think it was probably 4 years maybe that the MPL was going on. It's a lot of money.
2019 is when it started. 2019 was the
Oh,
first
it's
year.
2019. Okay, so like 2 years, 2 or 3 years. That's still a lot of money.
I played Magic for less money.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Give me some.
Yeah, and like it was, and the system was so wonky. It was just really weird to get into for anybody who was, your average Joe Schmo trying to just grind to get into the MPL. You had a really contrived, like, just weird path to try to get there. You had to already basically be a pro, or you had to be a streamer who got a streamer invite into the MPL, kind of thing. Like they just ran the whole thing very poorly. I'll just say that. Like it just was not very good.
Also, did either of you ever like enjoy watching it online?
Nothing other than like the championships, right? Like top eight of set championships or anything like that, or the the players tour stuff. Like sure, I can watch that, but your weekly MPL events, no.
Yeah.
Nobody really. I don't think anybody cared to watch those.
Yeah, I mean, Magic's not a game of personality at the end of the day. Like, there's no real interaction between the players. It got even harder with COVID because obviously everyone's coming in remotely to do it. Maybe if there was a big production value behind it, great. But even in the past, they've struggled to make World Championships anything other than, let's speak to the desk. Here's a game. Let's speak to the desk. Here's a game. So,
yeah, and I mean, and here's the thing, right? Magic is a game. Is not very good to watch. It is not a spectator's game by any means. It's not League of Legends. It's not CS:GO. But I think another game that is also very hard to watch, still a better spectator game, but still very hard to watch if you don't know what's going on, is StarCraft 2. And there are some fantastic StarCraft 2 casters out there. And not to say that the casters that we had for Magic were bad casters. I think they were good casters. But there's something that casters can do that go above and beyond just gurgitating what's happening, right? Just gurgitating play by play. There's something that you can do, and I think that there was just that little bit of extra oomph, that little bit of headroom that was missing, that kind of sunk the watchability of it a bit. I know there are some casters who kind of have that, right? I think like I'm gonna name off Cedric Phillips, Marshall Sutcliffe. Some of these guys they've been doing it for a long time because they've been doing it for like Star City Games and things like that. Like they have kind of this casting background from doing it for a long time, this experience, and they do a pretty good job. But I think that just there's a lot of just kind of margins of like 5 or 10% all over the place that ended up just sinking the whole program, plain and simple, right? So but I guess in relation to that, and I'm going to jump a little bit ahead here in the timeline of things, I'm going to jump to just actually a couple days ago, in relation to the MPL being retired. William Huey Jensen, so one of the most beloved pro players of all time, he has retired from Magic professionally, but has taken up a position as director of play programs at Wizards of the Coast. What that means, kind of still up in the air. We saw the job description on his Twitter thread, and basically what it means is that he will be overseeing all play programs across all of Magic, from the F&M casual side all the way up to the high-end competitive scene, bringing in new players and keeping in franchise players going and pushing for those top ends of competition. So
maybe you could turn around the competitive scene then, like kind of bring it back to its roots.
And that's the hope, right?
Yeah.
The hope is that with somebody as ingrained in the scene as him, I mean, he has multiple Pro Tour top 8s, multiple GP wins. The man has been everywhere, has done everything for a long time. And the hope is that he can bring some of that old school, what we loved about competitive Magic from back in the day, and innovate on that a little bit, and keep that core still around and push competitive Magic forward in a better way, right? Better than the MPL. The MPL sounded good in paper, but that's just kind of the hope. So
Bring
we'll
back
have to.
Trochers, Huey.
That's what we're hoping, right?
I still watch old ones sometimes because like it's just more fun watching them in paper. Like having the opponents sit across from each other, you can play the man a little bit, you can bluff a little bit, you can some of them have some players have great entertainment like some like top deck flips and stuff like that.
Oh
And
my god, Helix! Oh my
god! yeah.
Yeah, like that's but like so that's a big thing. Big congrats to him on that. I mean, that's a huge career move. That's massive. And it's a lot of pressure, I think, because he now bears the entire community on his shoulders. And let's just hope that he is enough of a voice, and that Wizards and Hasbro give him enough agency and enough trust of him as a player to make the right decisions for the competitive community. Because at the end of the day, I don't want Hasbro coming in and throwing money and in front of the problem. Not like saying throwing resources, but throwing profits, throwing what their profit margins are going to look like in front of this, and saying this is what you have to meet against. That's just not going to end well for anybody, and I don't want to see that happen to Huey. I think that his reputation as a Magic player and a community member is far more, is at stake kind of here. And if things go south, he's going to get lambasted by the community. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, I think that his hiring is the statement of intent, because they could have easily gone and got someone external and given us this nice big press release about how this person has done amazing things in other places, and then use them as a mouthpiece. But using someone with so much credibility, with so much fanfare, and such a big kind of following, it's almost a statement of intent that maybe he's going to have a lot more say and a lot more influence than even we know at this stage, because there's only one way he's going to want to take things realistically, and that's either back to how it used to be, or maybe back with a twist. And again, my knowledge of kind of past events has been watching, old World Championships, old events that were paper. And like you said, Shamus, that's when the personality's in the game, when you're physically sitting across from someone. There is no personality in arena, which is, I think, what's really hurt the game over the last year or so. Obviously unavoidable, but yeah, I think his kind of him signing his name on the dotted line, giving up what was left of his career to do this, is him saying almost to the community, like, I've got you. Give me time. I'll sort everything out. And I think that's a commitment that Wizards are putting out there as well in hiring him.
That's a really good point, and it actually makes me optimistic about this now.
Yeah. Hopefully that 2022's competitive scene will be, well, maybe not 2022, 2023's competitive scene will be better. Cool. Couple last minute things here. We'll touch on this very quickly. Daybreak Games coming up as a new developer and coming up as a new publisher for Magic Online. So Wizards is shifting Magic Online away from their in-house team, or I should say away from their brand specifically and their in-house studio, off to Daybreak Games, and the team who is currently working on Magic Online will be moving to Daybreak Studios or Daybreak Games, kind of setting up a new team and managing and taking on Magic Online from there. Daybreak Games, for anybody who doesn't know, there's kind of a name that you may not have heard of if you've heard of EverQuest before, which I'm sure that's a title that if you don't know what it is, you've heard about it or you've heard the name before. EverQuest, H1Z1 Battle Royale. If you've heard, you probably have heard that. DC Universe Online, PlanetSide 2 are just a few of their games that they've done. So they have a history of kind of maintaining ongoing living online communities. And so that's a pretty cool move, I think, giving more resource to Magic Online, sprucing things up a bit, maybe making it a little bit more palatable, approachable for players who are not happy with the arena landscape and want to go try out something else. Thoughts?
I mean, for me, it screams kind of just business move initially. Maybe it's, they would, it's a cost they can save rather than outsourcing it everything. Why not strike a deal with a developer and say, listen, we've got a great team ready to go. Let's just transfer everything, make sure they're happy with everything. The question for me would be, where are the creative and kind of artistic rights going to sit now? Is it still going to be 100% Wizards and they're just going to dictate to Daybreak? Or are Daybreak taking things on and going to be able to put that spin on it? We know nothing will drastically change anytime soon. Again, the idea of online isn't to be mimicking things like Arena. Like, it needs to almost be the exact opposite. It needs to stay clear. They need to stay unique. But like you say, there are some minor tweaks that they could probably make to make it more approachable. And for players then like myself who want to play Commander, Modern, explore these kind of other formats and maybe don't have an LGS to visit, that's my only option. So I would like it to be a platform that I can use and be confident in using, and maybe not have to get a few months under my belt before I'm comfortable with how to use it.
Yeah, one thing they did say was that the team, once they're over at Daybreak and they transition, they are going to be able to they'll kind of express the direction that they want to take things. So I think there is going to be some development and creative freedom from that side. They did also say they're going to be working very closely with Wizards. So it's still in Wizards' wheelhouse to some extent. I think Wizards kind of has the final check, final sign off on things, but it sounds like the team at Daybreak is going to have kind of a bit of agency. And I know that they said they were going to be sprucing up like the multiplayer Commander UI on Magic Online, so making multiplayer more pleasant to work with. So that's a very cool thing. I had a weird tinfoil hat theory that this move, now like you said, is kind of a business move, but this is a move to distance themselves from Magic Online. That Wizards wants to distance themselves from the platform as a whole, and get away from that over the next 5 years, so that they can very cleanly kind of sweep the platform under the rug, discontinue support for it, and then just kind of put their eggs in the Arena basket and try to move in that direction some way. It's a bit tinfoil hatty for sure, but I mean, thinking about how it's also weird to me that might be the play, because also a lot of people are going back to Magic Online because they don't like Alchemy. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's tinfoil hat. There you throw that out there.
I think it makes a weird amount of sense. It's one of those conspiracy theories, almost like when you first hear it, you're like, no, wait a minute.
Maybe.
I feel like if they wanted to flip the switch on Arena, we would already have more than just Brawl, Historic, and Standard. Yes, now Alchemy, but we would already have something else in there. It's such a cash cow. Maybe Historic Horizons Jumpstart was the beginning of that. Maybe that was testing some waters, but for me, development on Arena just seems so slow. I don't know what the size of that team is like. Nothing major ever seems to happen. When maintenance happens, I see a 2, 3, 4 gigabyte file get uploaded, but then that's just a new set and nothing really changes. And it's desperately crying out for more formats, but at the cost of online, it almost just seems like too much of a sensitive topic to touch, and it would probably play out worse for them in the long run. Who knows? But I don't think that's as far-fetched as maybe you're making out it could be.
Well, like, if you think about it, right? Like, if they move this off and they start to distance themselves over the next 5 years, if they follow this play up with, hey, in 2 years, hey, here's Pioneer, and then in at the end of that 5 years, hey, here's Modern, maybe.
I mean, for me, Commander has to be the big one. Like,
sure,
if they're putting their eggs in that basket and literally saying, if you've never played MTG before, don't play Standard, play Commander. Like, that should be your entry. And that's fine. Like, the Commander, the pre-con decks, they're fantastic, and it is a great way to it's a great way to get into the game. Like, I wouldn't doubt it, and I'm sure that if it was available on there and you had 4-player matchmaking, it might be the primary way I play it. I get why Commander's as big as it is, even though I don't touch it.
It would be the way I play. I think
Yeah, of course
it
it
would be
would.
the way it would be the way I play. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm typically a competitive player. Like, don't get me wrong, but I don't think you could do Commander ranked. Yeah, I would probably. Yeah, it would be the primary format I would play because it would just be no two games would ever be the same. And I feel like
Yeah.
with Commander, you're not just going to run into the is it turns deck, every single game.
Yeah.
The way the formats are built is to avoid that specifically, which is fantastic. But that would have to be the big one, and that's kind of, I guess, what 2022 will show us what their intent is. If we get to June, July time and it's like, okay, here's a state of play for MTG Arena, new formats are coming. If it's Commander or if it's modern, that to me says, yeah, in a few years, everything will be there and online's gone. If we get through 2022 and nothing really has changed, maybe they focus again more on digital only formats, then to me, the two will run parallel for at least the next 5 years, 6 years minimum.
Shamus, any thoughts on this?
I mean, if the new Daybreak Games can make online look not like Microsoft Paint, then I feel like you could get quite a few more people over. That would be great. Just general aesthetic upgrades would be nice.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I've been intrigued by your guys' conspiracy theories. So I see some merit to them too, honestly.
I wrote about him a little bit in my article announcing it. So if anybody's interested, go check that out. Okay, couple quick last few things, rapid fires. Last two things here. Alchemy. Thoughts on Alchemy? Go.
It's not ruining the game the way people think it is. Just don't play it. Play standard instead. Play historic instead. Play brawl instead. For God's sake, no one's forcing you to play it. It's not going to overtake standard. It's not going to replace standard. Like it. Again, this is another conspiracy. Then I don't think, at least I touch wood, I don't think they're scrapping R&D for the sake of we can just change things in Alchemy, because they can't reprint a card on paper every time they make that change. Like it's purely a digital thing. It doesn't deserve the panic or the outlash that it's received. Just get on with your life and play whatever you want to play.
So when it came to modern earlier, Alan, you were the boomer. I was the zoomer. When it comes to Alchemy, I'm the boomer. I uninstalled Arena. On that announcement, not for multiple reasons. I wish if they had, and if they wanted to do online, like, digital based Magic, I wish it was all one thing. Like they had, you're not playing with any of the other like physical cards. They just have digital only cards, and it'll be like an entirely new experience. I don't like seeing the old cards kind of like blend in with that, and then them changing the old cards so that they're not even reflected as they are in paper anymore. I just felt that was kind of weird. But the main reason that I uninstalled with the Alchemy announcement is that I just can't keep up with the economy of Arena anymore. I can't play Historic already because there's just so much to collect. And now there's Alchemy, and it's like that's just more wild cards that I don't have. I'm not going to be. I can barely. I have like a one deck. If you're grinding free to play, you can make a couple of standard decks. But it's just too hard to keep up with. So that's the main reason I uninstalled when the Alchemy announcement came out.
Yeah, I agree with Niall. It's not as bad as you think, guys. It's really not. Play what you want. No one's forcing you to play Alchemy, unless you're playing Historic, because you actually have to play Alchemy cards in Historic. It's not as the Alchemy cards in Historic are not as prevalent. I think the Inquisitor Captain is probably the one that sees the most amount of play between humans, like Coco humans, and the life game, the Skuriok Heliod life game combo. But outside of that, I don't think there's too many other Alchemy cards that you're actually playing. So it's not really that bad. Let's be true. Let's be honest. I agree. The economy is terrible, and it's very, very hard to keep up. Even as somebody who's a whale in Arena, I spent way more money on Arena than I care to admit. I'm going to throw that out there. It's not consumer friendly by any means, but Alchemy as a format is cool. Actually, I enjoy it. It's actually fun. It's not standard, it's different. If their goal was to have a different experience than standard, but while using standard cards, they achieved that in spades, because it's definitely not the same experience. You're not running into is it turns mono white, mono green every format or every game you play. You're running into, you have different dragon variants, mono red, Grixis, is it Boros. You have Golgari as a really good deck. You have Orzhov, clerics and angels as a great deck. You have blue white party. Like there's actually a diversity of decks in the format, which is very cool. So I think as Alchemy continues to grow and develop and mature, it will become a much better format. I would also love to see just a digital only card format, like Shamus said. I think that would be pretty interesting to see kind of just how, like, throw caution to the wind and let's just play with just these cards. But that's going to take... That's going to take... Actually, it's Hearthstone. Yeah. It's Hearthstone.
That's kind of... Let's see that then they'd really push the limits of the design for the digital space. Like, yeah, like I like a lot.
But then you would have to differentiate. Then you might have to differentiate those cards from Alchemy. Maybe Alchemy as a format just goes away. I don't know. But like, if you go to the extremes of, like, I don't know if anybody played Hearthstone, and do you remember old Yogg Saron, where when he entered play, he cast a random spell for every spell you cast during the game.
That's crazy.
With random targets. So if they did something like that, I don't know. But is that healthy for, like, the Alchemy as a format that's more kind of closer aligned to, like, traditional Magic? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of promise for the format. If you play it and enjoy it, great. If you don't like it, it's not for you. No worries there. And the last thing, and we're going to end off on a high note here, Kamigawa previews. Thoughts on Kamigawa previews? We got a few of them that came from the previous stream. We got some Christmas holiday ones. There's also been some leaks. I don't know if you want to talk about those, if you just want to stick to the official ones, but either way, thoughts on Kamigawa so far?
Yeah, I mean, we'll stick to what we know officially. I think is probably the best way to go about it. But I'm hyped. I think nothing is yet gripping me to the point where I'm like, okay, my pre-order's in, I'm getting my set booster, I'll get a few collector boosters, all that. So I'm not all in that aspect, but I'm excited to see what it brings. I'm excited to see kind of what they'll reveal in January and the further previews. I think it'll be an exciting set. I just want this. I want diversity now. Like you say, you've mentioned about the kind of decks that are running Riot in Standard right now. I just want a set to throw the spanner in the works, and Kamigawa could be that. I don't want to have to wait again until Streets of New Capenna or whatever to get that. So if it gives me some interesting cards, if it gives me some fantastic artwork that I can stick away in a binder and not touch or sell later down the line, great, I'm happy. But right now I'm going to stay reserved until we get kind of more official information.
Yeah, we don't quite have enough. Yeah, there's only 6 or so actual mechanically unique cards that have been put out. But of the ones that have, there are some really cool ones. Like Alan and I are both really excited for Satoru Umezawa. Me for the purposes of ninjutsu coming back. That's pretty big news. I ended up picking up a Yuriko a couple of weeks ago because I kind of had some suspicions. But Alan is also, I know, is thinking about that commander a bit.
Yeah. I'm all in. I'm all in on this set. Sorry about that. I'm all in on this set. I'm part Asian, so this kind of speaks to me. I love the aesthetic of the set. I love the modernization of the set. Yeah, just I'm in. I'm buying. And actually, one thing that we didn't touch on. Excuse me. My goodness, my throat. One thing we didn't touch on with Crimson Vow and now with Kamigawa is that Wizards is the artists that they brought in for some of the cards for the set.
Yeah.
So they brought in, I forget her name, the artist for Castlevania for Crimson Vow to do a Soren piece. They brought in the artist for Metal Gear to do Satoru Umezawa, the buy box promo. They brought in the artist for Fists of the North Star to do the Kaito one of the Kaito arts. So they're bringing in fantastic talent, acclaimed artists that you will know, and you'll know their work. And like that's just that to me is amazing. That's awesome. Seeing kind of that crossover that's a bit deeper than just bringing in a character, but bringing in the art style is very awesome. So I'm all in. I'm gonna go get at least a set booster, if not a collector booster, because there's some really sweet stuff in the collector boosters too.
And the art of the new lands too. I can't get over that. Yeah.
Like Wizards, you dropped that bombshell on us at the end of the of 2021, where historically there have been more cards printed and more Magic bought than any other year in history, and you dropped that on us, and now you're just setting us up for 2022 to be another one of those years because God, like they said that Neon Dynasty's price was going to be increased, like the cost of the boxes were going to be higher than normal. I don't recall exactly how much higher, but they said like distributors were saying that they were getting notes from WotC that things were going to be more expensive, just plain and simple. So, but I can see why, considering that they have to contract out these artists, and stuff. Like they're working with Kagito, they're working with a bunch of really acclaimed artists. They're printing so many variations of cards and different versions and arts and things like that. Like it kind of makes sense that this is going to be a little bit more expensive of a set, and that could also be for other reasons, supply chain reasons and things of that sort, production costs and things of that sort. But like, if they're just paying the artists, I mean, that's kind of a win, right? Like they're actually paying artists. I'm okay with paying for a little bit more for badass art and cards, right? So
I am a little bit disappointed that the lands are only going to be in one of every 3 packs. I feel like they're actually going to be kind of almost expensive, like to get like, if you want 20 lands for your EDH deck or whatever, they may be like $2 a pop, maybe 3.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that like even when I think it was Unstable lands came out, they were like $3 a piece for.
They were the entire value of the pack, because Unstable has
but pretty much. And they've only, I think, recently have like even come down in price, but that's just because more of that set got opened. But on release,
it's because they got reprinted in Double Masters.
Right. Yeah. But on release they were expensive. I think they were in every pack, right?
Yes, they were. Yeah.
So, but I guess for what it's worth, Unstable only had 1 box, whereas now we have 3 different kinds of boxes. You can get them in foil.
Well, the real reason they actually had that $3 price tag was because there was no other value in the set, right? Like there had to be, they were still $100 boxes, and you have to distribute that effort, the expected value somewhere. So they distributed to the lands. In Kamigawa, there's actually going to be really
good value,
awesome cards that are usable across formats. Like everybody's going to want it for Commander, or like just all the different arts to collect as well. So there's going to be more of that set opened, which should bring the price of the lands down. But the fact that they're still only in one of every 3 packs means that they will be more expensive than, let's say, the Innistrad lands that we just got which are great to pick up for like 50 cents a piece right now. They're just, I would expect the Kamigawa ones to be more.
100%. Yeah. I mean, and even people like the Innistrad ones are pretty. There's some polarization around those lands too, because some people think you really kind of can't tell what lands you're actually looking at, and I can see it to some extent. Actually, having the lands and looking at them in person, I can understand that a little bit. But the Kamigawa ones, they're just going to be insane. So you kind of have to, get a booster box or 2 and pray you get enough. But
or 4.
Get a case. But yeah, I think that wraps up our year 2021. Kind of an insane year. Final thoughts on anything here, guys?
No, just full of optimism for 2022. I think it's great to see them having WotC and the Magic in general having a great year. we've had the resurgence of things like D&D, nerd culture's on the rise again, and hopefully Magic will continue to kind of benefit from that. And let's just pray for more good news throughout the entirety of 2022.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Just excited for 2022. We know the product lineup so far. There's a lot of great things coming out. Really excited for Kamigawa, and I'm really, really excited for Commander Legends 2.
Yeah, Commander Legends 2. We should do a podcast about talking what's coming up throughout the year next year.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it would just be 90 minutes of me talking about the Fortnite card, so probably best not to.
Oh man. Yeah, but I'm excited as well. Same sentiments. I think we had a really, really awesome year for Magic. A lot of cool new things happened, and just the product slate, the product stack for next year has got me very excited for what's to come for Magic, and yeah, just very, very excited about just a lot of the things coming up this year. So but yeah, thank you guys everybody so much for watching and hanging out with us through this what is this now, hour and a half podcast. I think we'll be doing more of these, and this was a really fun thing. Just kind of take a break and just chat. It's really fun. So if you guys liked the podcast, again, do us a favor, drop a like on the video here, drop us a comment, let us know what are your thoughts on 2021. What was your favorite thing that came out from Magic from 2021? And make sure you smash the subscribe button. It lets us know that you guys are liking what we're putting out. And make sure you also ding the notification bell. We are putting out tons of content on the channel here, so make sure you guys are notified when we are putting more stuff up. And make sure to check out MTGRocks.com and our Facebook, Twitch, or Twitter. And yeah, appreciate you guys hanging out. We'll see you guys in the next one. See you later.